Why does influencing design decisions feel like throwing spaghetti at a wall? Well, it shouldn't. And today we're going to dig into my guest Stefon Tyler's 5-15-5 framework, and it'll change how your design team pitches its ideas. Stop walking into important meetings without doing your research. So stick around and you'll learn a systematic approach that's helping designers finally get that seat at the table. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome. I am super stoked to have you. The Beyond UX Design shop is open. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some of my favorite UX and software-related quotes, or pick up some digital downloads and print them yourself. Pick up your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design, master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes, get free shipping on all orders over $30, and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to get your print on. This week's episode is brought to you by Dr. Ari Zalmanow's Customer Insights Blueprint. Research is broken. If you're using the same approach to research that they were using in 1980, your business is already paying the price. What if in the next 12 weeks you could build an insights machine inside your business that 10x's customer clarity, growth bets, and product decisions without hiring a single researcher? Get the strategic learning blueprint that helps you find hidden revenue for your business by finding hidden value in your customers using the tools and teams that you already have. Grab it for free at beyonduxdesign.com/blueprint. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. Get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So you're tired of your design ideas getting shot down by stakeholders? Well, you're not alone. And today's guest, Stefon Tyler, has cracked the code with his 5-15-5 method, and it's helping design teams sell their ideas more effectively than ever before. So get ready to apply a bit of customer experience strategy to your stakeholder problems. Today's guest is on a mission to help startups find, validate, and win their ideal customers. Stefon Towler is known for his practical, no-nonsense approach to customer discovery and marketing strategy, helping businesses cut through the noise and make smarter, faster decisions. With years of hands-on experience guiding teams through customer discovery, product validation, and marketing challenges, Stefon has helped founders build repeatable systems that attract and retain the right customers. He's spoken at major events like Startup Week Cincy and works with businesses ranging from early-stage ventures to growing companies looking to solidify their market presence. Stefon's approach is simple, straightforward, and uses proven methods to get results. He's passionate about teaching businesses how to build customer acquisition systems that work, giving them the tools to grow sustainably without wasting time or money. So get ready to learn how to master customer discovery and marketing strategy. Stefon, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on, dude. How is it going?
Excited to be here, man. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, dude. So you are, I think, you are the first guest I've had on Beyond UX Design that I actually know personally and have worked with. And oh, you know what? No, you're right. Oh, shit, dude. You're the second. Remember Jeff Hendrickson from GE?
Yes.
Yeah, he was on the show. Jeff. So you're actually second. I'm bad. All right. So you and Jeff, you're on a very, 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 very small crew of personal friends that I have worked with that have been on the show. Anyway. All right. So Stefon, you had a lot of experience doing a lot of really cool things. Tell us a little bit about you. And then ultimately, I'd love to hear about how you came up with this 5-15-5 framework to help understand those people that you're trying to sell to.
Absolutely. So I'll keep it short, right? So I started in engineering school and I was not really sure what I wanted to do. It kind of had a pit in my stomach because I didn't know what direction I wanted to go on. But it wasn't until my professor there showed me this video. It was IDEO's like reinvention of the shopping cart. And that really just blew my mind. So many people, they were like biologists, they were like psychologists. And the one thing that stuck out to me is that They could be doing anything in the world, yet they were there trying to figure out how to redesign the shopping cart. They were shoving carts down the aisle and in the parking lot trying to clock and see how long they were going, interviewing people, and then sticky notes everywhere. It was just amazing. And all I could think was, man, how do I get to do that? So that's exactly what I did. And I spent the next 2 and 3 years studying my butt off just about how do you learn about people? How do you build products? How do you build something that's actually worth making a remark about? And eventually I found myself in this little company called Seek here in Cincinnati, where we started to go into people's homes and really understand truly who people are, and then work with these large companies like Viacom, Paramount, you name it, fintech, technology, all these different, avenues where we help them understand their customers and help them build marketing strategies that actually made them profitable and made them work. And it was a great experience, man. It really changed my life, which landed me here in my company now at Insight and Innovate, where I help early stage startups. And I realized that when they went through this process, there's so much that they actually don't know. And of course, they're not doing as well as some of these larger businesses. So my goal was to figure out, how do I take what they're doing and apply it in this framework and really actually help these startups and these growing businesses be successful in their journeys.
Yeah, dude. Ah, man, I love that so much. Yeah, and so what I love about this idea too, and I want to dig into the framework in a minute, but what I think a lot of us miss as designers, we often hear the phrases like, "Oh, the design speaks for itself," or "My work will speak for itself," or "They just don't get design. That's why they don't get my suggestions or my input." And then we often wonder why we don't get a seat at the table. We often wonder why we're not part of the decision-making process and we aren't seen as partners. We're sort of seen as order takers. And this idea that, we've got to understand that we have a product that we are trying to sell, even if it's internally to another team. We have an idea we're trying to sell. We have designs we're trying to sell, concepts, things that we are trying to influence. And we've got to understand the people that we are selling those ideas to. They generally don't think like us. They're generally not designers, and that work won't speak for itself. So I want to talk about the 5-15-5 framework and how designers can apply that concept to things like stakeholder decisions and stuff like that. So tell us a little bit about the 5-15-5 framework, what it is, why it works, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So it's pretty easy. It's the 5-15-5 method. You interview 5 people, you build 15 themes from those interviews, and then you craft 5 messages from those interviews so you can build and test and actually generate feedback so you can make improvements. Now, individuals need this because a lot of teams build their decision makings and these long strategies based off assumptions and gut reactions, when they need to actually learn truly from who these people are so they can build a better product. What this framework helps you do is go from discovery to actually going through the action and building an implementation.
I love it, dude. Yeah, and I love that. It's such a simple way to break that down. Five people, 15 themes, 5 messages. And like off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a bunch of different times when I've had big presentations presenting to a group of executives or stakeholders or whatever it is, trying to pitch an idea when I didn't have any idea what those people were. I never tested my message at all. And a lot of times I can count on maybe one hand how many times some of those pitches actually worked. More often than not, when I went in there blind and cold, they fell flat. The messages did not resonate, and the outcome was not what I wanted at the end of the day. So I'm curious, like when you think about this from like a design perspective, because you spent a lot of time on design teams as well, what do you see as wrong with the way that design teams are trying to sell ideas today from your personal experience? You run into any issues like that where something maybe, like I said, I'm just curious from your own personal experience, what's going on with design teams today that just sort of assume everyone knows that design speaks for itself and things like that?
Absolutely. So I feel like there's this misconception, like you mentioned, that the design speaks for itself, but you still, even if it does, you need to be able to tell the story, right? And in order for you to actually tell that story, you have to understand who your audience is. If you don't respect the individuals enough to understand who they are, it's no way you're going to be able to talk to them in a way that actually lands and it actually hits. So I find that a lot of times we get caught up in thinking that it's self-explanatory when it's not. and how do we kind of help bring them closer and talk to them in a way that actually just helps them understand what you're trying to communicate in a very clear, succinct way.
Yeah, I love it, dude. So yeah, I'm just thinking like off the top of my head, I have like a really great example of one where I just did not do this. And if I had done this before, what's interesting too, I think about this, like one, it could help you present the idea, but then also it might even help you understand that that idea is not even worth presenting in the first place. And it's not even worth like fighting for. Like one of the things I'm thinking of, this big enterprise software team I was on back in New Orleans, we had this awesome team spread out all over the world. It was like one of the best teams I've ever worked with. And we found out that the business was just defunding the app and shutting it down. And so we were trying to pitch this idea, like how we could make it better and how we could improve all this stuff. But it didn't really matter at the end of the day because it was all about accounting. And nothing that we would have ever said to these people would have changed their mind. But I spent, and my team, God, dude, we spent like literally a week and a half like crafting this presentation and practicing and meetings to talk about the meeting. And it was all just an utter waste of time because none of it made a difference and none of it would have mattered. And because we didn't know the audience, we had no idea that they cared about accounting stuff and none of it had to do with design. Nothing we could have said would have made a difference.
Isn't that wild, right? Because you don't realize how much time, money, and effort you can actually save if you just take the time out to talk to someone, right? There's no way that you could just go into a meeting and say, hey, I know everything about this person. Now, I bet had you actually went to your stakeholders, and it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to think too much about it, right? Sometimes we get all built up or I have to go talk to my stakeholders and they may be in a position of power. But if you actually understand what's important to you, what's your current reality, and then build and craft my position around your current reality so I can help you find the gap so you can get to where you need to go. I think a lot of times we have this misconception that we already know what someone needs or what's important to them. And it's just not the truth.
I love it, dude. So let's break down the 5-15-5 and dig a little bit into each of them. I want to talk about first like finding 5 people. Something that we talk about in UX a lot is, getting insights from the wrong people is just as bad as no insights at all. And I want to talk about the 5 people. First, 5. Why 5? Is there a reason why we go with 5? Is there a magic number statistically speaking why 5 is a key number there?
So 5 is a solid number where it allows you to get a nice, depth of thought. You have a diversity in like who you're talking to and who you're speaking with. And it allows you to generate just enough themes within it and start to generate patterns, because a pattern isn't a pattern until you hear from at least 2 or more people. So it kind of sets the stage for that. But again, this is the early stages. Okay. This is not the end all be all. 5 is just the beginning. So I don't want individuals to think that you speak to 5 people and then you're done. No, that's not the case. 5 is a starting point that allows you, if you don't have any foundation at all, that you can start to build something to work off of where you can actually test your assumptions and begin to validate those things. So now when you want to interview and learn things at scale, you're not just shooting in the dark and targeting the wrong people. So it allows you to really diverge and really just hone in on who you want to talk to at the end of the day.
I love that, man. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I think that's worth noting. Maybe in a small company startup, if you're on a design team and you have 5 other people that you work with, 5 is all you need. But when I'm thinking about like big, large enterprise teams and I'm trying to convince a team to make a decision or convince a team to actually execute on something in a certain way where I might have hundreds or maybe even thousands of people that want to go do this. Like one of the things I'm kind of thinking about is like just change management, right? Like process change. Let's say like I'm a designer, right? And I have some thoughts on like how to better the QA process so that the engineership matches our designs, right? We want to enable some type of process. I could work on a giant team. In the past, I've worked on a software team that had 150 engineers on a product. And so, what you want to do, you don't want to come in and like be like, we're going to insist that every engineer does this and we decided it for you. You've got to make sure that they're willing to accept those changes. And so going and talking to like 5 individual engineers, I'm thinking in my head probably get you like pretty close along the way. But those 5 engineers out of 100 something engineers, it's not everybody. And so you can't be 100% certain, but I think it would, like you said, send you in the right direction to know. I think like if all 5 of them like, no, that's terrible. Like, you're on the wrong path, right? If all 5 say, yeah, it's a great idea, maybe you're on the right path. If 3 of them say something, 2 of them say something different, then maybe like it's probably at some point we need to start talking to more people. So the next question I have is like, how do you identify the 5? So let's say, in an example like we talked about where I've got these engineers, I've got a bunch of people I could potentially talk to. I want to talk to 5. You mentioned diversity before. So it's like not just the 5 closest people to you that you talk to all the time, right? It's probably going to be more broad than that. How do you pick the 5 people? Like, are there right and wrong ways to pick those 5?
So I always advise against choosing the 5 people closest to you because ideally they might, let's assume they like you, right? So they're not going to give you, they may sugarcoat their feedback. They say like, oh, I actually like Jeremy, so I'm not going to tell him how I really feel. I'll just give him just the highlights, maybe nudge him in the right direction. But I also have those family members where like, I think I show my mom something and man, she ripped me to pieces. I'm like, okay, all right, mom, you could have just went a little easier on me, but I appreciate the feedback, mom. Just, love me first. All right. Give me like an Oreo sandwich, something. But all that to say is, so you want to get outside of the people that are just closest to you first. And then I want you to, when you go into this, I want you to think with the end in mind. All right. So you choose the right customer by figuring out, all right, who is my ideal customer? Who am I willing, or no, actually, who am I aiming to serve? So if I have all of these engineers, do I have any idea of the specific engineer? Are they mechanical engineers? Are they coding engineers? All right, what are they actually doing? So now we start to narrow in, all right, who is the ideal person that we are creating this product, this service, this business around? And it's going to allow us to start to figure out and kind of pull out, okay, not this person, maybe we need to talk to that person. That's step one, or just figuring out who we need to talk to and making sure you're talking to the right individuals, because it can skew just your data significantly if you're just barking up the wrong tree.
So let's say this is something interesting. Like, let's say you start talking to 5 people. Do you ever go start talking to a few people and then realize like you're getting answers you didn't expect, or it was totally off? Something's not right here. You might find a different set of 5, like when you're going through it, instead of like, well, if I talk 5, talk to 3, I only got 2 more. I don't, it's not that rigid. How do you know? Like, how do you know if like the people you're talking to are right while you're having these conversations?
Absolutely. So of course you kind of have what we call, you kind of screen them a little bit. So you try to get as close as possible. But of course, you have to be flexible. Sometimes you get into a conversation and you realize this is not, you're not who I thought you were, right? But it still allows an opportunity, whereas I won't end the conversation right then and there. I will try to figure out, all right, like, let me first kind of set the stage. Is this something you're familiar with, something you're open to? And if they're not, then we try to figure out, how do I approach this with a beginner's mindset? So you still continue to be curious, right? You go in, you want to take off your blinders and your binoculars, okay, where you're only going into the conversation, hoping to see exactly what you want to see, but allow yourself, like, bring yourself to the conversation to be open to what you might figure out. Now, if you find out that, hey, this is not the right person, then feel free to go ahead and pivot, but do not just trash the conversation as a whole. There's always something to learn. There's always something you can pull out, but you need to remain diligent and continue to just be curious as you're going through the process.
Yeah, that's like such an important thing too. I've been on tons of like user interviews and things like that where we do a screen and we think this person's the right fit, and then we start asking them questions and it's like, wow, you're not the target at all. Like, this is not valuable. But to your point, I mean, I think like a good designer, researcher, whatever, would continue that conversation just to find a nugget. You never know what kind of nugget you're going to find in there that you might not expect. So, like keeping that's a great point. I love that. Just not trashing that conversation. So we've got the 5 people. We talked to 5 people. We get 5 discussions. Let's talk about the 15 patterns. What are we looking for when we say pattern? Like, what are we looking for? Are we looking for anything specific? I guess it all depends on what the outcome of the research is meant to do. But when you talk about patterns, what are we looking for?
Absolutely. So it definitely depends on the outcome of the research, but I can give you just high level, what are some things we want to find when we go through these interviews. So when you're actually in the interviews, let's say you've taken all of your notes, whether you've recorded, you've written them down. I want you to just transfer them, whether it's on a board, a digital board, or you're using sticky notes. I always have like sticky notes, but I got some right here. I always have some sticky notes like nearby. And you want to capture everything that you heard. Now you can begin to organize them in a way of what they say, what they think, what they feel, what they do. All right. Now, the whole goal of this, as I mentioned before, is what is their current reality? Those are some of the things that you're going to want to cover in this. And as I mentioned before as well, note that a pattern is only a pattern if two or more people say it. Now, if one person says it, but it's interesting, you don't have to throw it away, put it off to the side. It's an outlier. But the ultimate goal here is how do we build out the landscape so that we can find our gap? How can we find where we can actually be of value to those individuals? When you're going into the conversation, that's why we say begin with the end in mind. We already have the questions laid out prior to of, I want to get to know you. I want to understand what you say. What are you thinking? What actions are you actually taking? Right? How do you kind of frame up the world in your mind? And then I also want to talk to you about what do you want? If this is where you're here right now, what do you want? And then you're able to take that down. You actually put it up on the wall and you can see it. You blow it out. You say, all right, here's where I provide the value. Here's this gap. And then we talk about the assumptions. Okay. I thought they were going to say this. It turns out they actually feel this way and we're so far off, but you don't know that until you actually put it up all on the wall and start to figure it out.
I love that, dude. Yeah, you mentioned something too, I think is like worth calling out is perception. And this is something that I think is, again, really important for designers that often, my personal experience at least, I often see a bit of hubris in the design team where they think, they're the most important thing, or they think they understand everything, and everyone else needs to be quote unquote educated. Like how many times have you heard like designers say they need to educate the business about something, or we need to educate stakeholders, right? This hubris that like we are smarter than the rest of the team. And that perception though is so important for us. We talk about empathy all the time as designers, but we very rarely apply that empathy to our team. And we very rarely apply that empathy and try to understand and get in someone's mind the people that we work with, especially stakeholders, product managers, executives, things like that. And I don't know if you have anything extra to add to that, but that perception piece is like, you're just shutting up and you're talking, you're listening, and you're hearing what they perceive the problem to be, or what they perceive the context to be, regardless of if it's wrong or right. That perception is what you're trying to ultimately get into so that you can speak to them through their context to help influence it from their perspective so that because no one likes to be told they're wrong. No one likes to be told that their decision was a bad decision. If anything, like the best way for us to influence a larger team is to like get the rest of the team to come to those conclusions on their own, and you can't do that if you're like beating them over the head with this idea that like, they need to change and they're wrong and everything else. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. It's not really a question, but that just struck me. I just love that you call it out.
Yeah, because when you go into a conversation, like you said, everyone has an experience and is experiencing life from their own context. And you will find out that, I think, what is it, like the carrot and the stick? Like, wherever just beating them over the head with the stick, it's not people, they're not going to want to listen to you. And you will find so much more benefit in getting people to actually follow you and have people gravitate to you and your thoughts and your feelings. If you have to educate them, you need to meet the people where they are, whether it's your customer, whether it's your boss, right? Whether it's the engineers. Of course, they don't think like you. That we're so different. We're similar and different at the same time. It's like, I believe, I can't think of the stat is that humans are about 97% the same, but we focus on that 3% difference for individuals. So lean into that. Yes, y'all have a lot in common, but lean into what you don't know so that you can actually bring them over to your side.
All right, UX fam, it is time for another mid-roll sponsor break. Let's hear it from our sponsor this week, Wix Studio. Okay, web designers, let's talk about the C word, creative burnout. Your client site has real portfolio potential, but between resourcing, feedback, tight budgets, and even tighter deadlines, it just doesn't make the cut. Wix Studio helps close that gap. Built for agencies and enterprises, you can bring your vision to life and keep it alive. With no-code animations, tons of AI tools, reusable design assets, and advanced layout tools. For your next project, check out wixstudio.com. That's wixstudio.com. And now, back to the show. And the last question I want to ask about the 15 patterns, how to separate signal from noise. Like when we're talking to people, we're going to hear a lot of stuff. Is there a way that you like to think about it and from like a statistics perspective or a more analytical perspective? Because I think we're often influenced by some of that noise when we probably shouldn't be. You know, the shiny thing is maybe noisy, but it's not really what we're trying to find. How do you like to do that? Do you have a way to separate that signal from the noise?
Absolutely. So how I kind of separate the signal from the noise is I need to take a step back and understand the context. So I think it's very easy for us to, a lot of times, some people can go too far into the deep end. A customer, a person says this, like, I want it this way. So they say, okay, I'm just going to give you what you want. No, you need to still take a step back, pause, slow down so you can speed up and consume what's actually happening. So what is the context of the market? What is the context of the business? And then what's your ultimate goal? And then where is that, if you build that Venn diagram, right? Where is that overlap between the three buckets, more buckets if you have them, so that you can figure out what's my path forward?
I love that. Something else I was actually just kind of thinking of as we're talking through this. I know it's called the 5-15-5 method. But what happens if we only get like 5, 10, less than 15 patterns? Is there something like should you keep going till you find 15? Or do you think it's sort of one of those things where every situation might be different and you kind of know when enough is enough? But is there, what are your thoughts on that? Like hard and fast rule of 15 or what do you think?
So it's not a hard and fast rule, right? We don't want you sitting there making up things. You don't have to you don't have to make up their entire experience, So just if you have 5 themes, 10 themes, it's okay, all right? This is a very flexible process, but if you can get to 15, then do so. I think it's really important to just, as you're going through this process, just keep your customer at the center of it and just stay as honest and true to the experience as you possibly can.
I love that. And you call it customer. And I want to reiterate, when we think about UX design, we often think of customers as like the end users. And we often think about, customers as something like the sales team or the support team kind of deals with. But for me, I want to stress again, like how important it is, I think, for us as an internal design team to think about our ideas and to think about our designs and the decisions that we're trying to influence as a product that we need to influence someone to quote unquote buy into. I know a lot of design teams hate the term pitch. They don't like using the term pitch. It sounds too salesy. But I mean, I think that that's how a lot of our teams work. They're not going to be, thinking of it as like a transactional relationship necessarily. And I don't think it's a transactional relationship, but I do think it's important for us to think about, we're trying to sell something and we need to convince someone to actually act upon it. And it's not just as simple as I think we often make it out to be. And I just love that idea of thinking of the people on the other side of the table as customers of something that we are trying to sell in a way, even if it's not financially, right? Reimbursed. But anyway, I love that. All right. So let's talk about the messages. So we're trying to test 5 simple messages. What are we trying to do here? Like, talk to me a little bit more about the 5 simple messages. Like, you have some examples on like how you might craft. Is this like, is it just like a theme for a, like when I think about our example of trying to present or the example I used earlier of like trying to convince the engineering team to follow some like QA process, like, is it like the theme of the message? Like how, like we, at the end of the day, we want to change the process, but it's like how we go about convincing them, how we change their mind. What are some ways that we could think about those 5 simple messages? How do you go about doing that?
Absolutely. So when I go about the process, when I want to develop a message for these individuals, especially when I'm considering going into testing, I want to make sure that it is consumer centric or customer centric, or even if it's, and again, we had this conversation about customers, consumer, but whatever the stakeholder is, that sales team, that engineering team, I want to make sure that it's focused on them. What's the problem that they're solving? What's the need? What's the pain point? How am I showing them that this is valuable and keeping them in mind through that point. Now, we don't want to ramble. Okay. A lot of times that we just want to talk it out, talk as much as we can because we want them to understand so bad. I want you to stop and I want you to be as concise and direct as possible. Okay. And okay, I'm gonna push y'all just a little bit. I want you to tap into your salesiness, your sales mind, and figure out how to get a good hook. You know, when you're riding down the street or somebody says something and you gotta do that double take, like, what'd you just say? Or you lean into a conversation that had no business you being in. You lean into the, the water hole, that's what you need to do. Figure out how to write a good hook because we know that our attention spans are gone like that, 15 seconds at most. So you need to hook them in off the bat. And then at the end of it, we need to build a call to action. One of the things I listened to a podcast a long time ago, and it was actually Entrepreneur on Fire. And one of the things that he talked about in that podcast was that when you go into a meeting, right, any meeting, a mentor, whatever you want, right, make sure you have the next meeting set up afterwards. Call to action. When are we going to meet next? I love to follow up with you. All right. So whatever that call to action is, right, you want to make sure that you have that and make it easy. Make it easy for them. Again, the attention spans are low. As easy as possible. Make it an easy yes. So that's how it kind of helps me and kind of builds my framework for how to develop just a clear messaging that we can go and test with and figure out, okay, once the feedback comes, what do we do next?
I like this. So let's think about this in the example of trying to influence a team to change a process. We're crafting those 5 messages. Are we going back to those 5 original people and say, we heard you. This is what we're thinking about. This is how we're going to present our work. We're going to present this proposed change to, I don't know, some committee who decides, the operations team who decides process improvements or whatever. And we're going to present this to that team. Are you going back to like those 5 original people and taking those 5 messages and saying, can you tell us which one would resonate with you most? Like, are you sort of doing like that research there before you ever go and do the actual presentation, right? Because you want to have that one winning hook. How do you go about doing that with the 5 messages, the 5 people? Do you talk to those original people or how do you do that?
So, with anything, like there's pros and cons to each path, right? If you're able to go back to these individuals, they're familiar, right? So they've kind of been with you on this journey. So it does help. Personally, I like to do both, to be honest. So I might talk to the first 5 people, and then I might talk to another 5 or another at least 3 at the least, just to get a fresh perspective, someone who's not as tied to just maybe the project or just the experience and what we've kind of built. But now you start to see like, where is the balance? And now you can also hear that we're starting to get feedback at scale. So you already have these 5 individuals. Now we might add 3 more, add 4 more. But again, both of these have the pros and cons where it's up to you. Personally, I say do both. Talk to the old people that you've already spoken with and find some new ears to listen to and see how they react to it as well.
Yeah, I love that. So like, how would you do that? Like what sort of, this is like I don't know, let's schedule a 30-minute meeting. I got some ideas, some thoughts. Thanks for your input last time. I got some thoughts about how we might improve this process. And then doing that, like, what do you do? How do you do that? Do you have any thoughts on how to make that effective?
Yeah, absolutely. So just giving your audience, right? So I know there's like in the corporate world, and then I'm going to take it outside of the corporate world. Corporate world can be a little more challenging, all right? Because it's hard to incentivize individuals, especially in this remote world. But the best part about that is you can be so direct. So it does have its advantages. You can be very clear and say, hey, and it's just a Teams message, whatever you use. Hey, I've been working on something and I just want to get your perspective on it. Can we just do 30 minutes? I feel like 30 minutes is, like you mentioned, is a solid time. 45 minutes is a stretch. An hour, people are probably like, what do you want? What do you want from me? All right. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. So have a solid 30 minutes. You talk to them. You can be direct. When you go into these conversations, it pays to be prepared. I don't want you to go into the conversation and start off with a pitch. Hey, I got this thing, man, and you're going to love it. You're going to love it, right? Nobody wants to be sold to. Nobody wants to be sold to. If you are going to pitch, I'm not saying don't pitch, but if you are going to pitch, save it to the very last thing. Save it to the end. Okay. And we're kind of going back a little bit because I'm going back to just the original interview. We'll start with the original interview and then we'll go into like the messages, right? So in that original interview, you want to just, like I mentioned, stop for a second and get to know them. Ask open-ended questions. Questions don't end in a yes or a no. And allow yourself to just get information. All right. So now you've already talked to them and you want to go back to them. All you have to do is just follow with that same message. And you're going to have to practice some resilience in this because not everyone is going to want to talk to you. And that's okay. That's okay. Everyone doesn't have to talk to you. All you need is 5, but you may have to contact 15, 20, 30 people. I remember at one point very early on in my career where I was searching for a mentor to kind of get into this business. I reached out to 30 people on LinkedIn. 3 got back. And one of those individuals turned out to be one of the best mentors in my life. She allowed me to guest lecture in her class. It got me connected where I was able to actually broker a deal between the CEO of one company and the university nearby to actually sponsor her class. It just turned into so many opportunities. So you never know, but you have to practice that resilience in this process. That's the only way that you can actually truly get the information that you need. So that's in business. You can be as direct as you want to be resilient, and go through the process to get to know them. Now, in the world, you have to, it's a little bit, you can incentivize them. So when you go through this, it goes from 30, 15 minutes. Okay. 15 minutes, pay for the coffee, pay for the lunch. All right. Don't show up at somebody's doorstep and just start asking with your hand out. Well, that company I talked about, the CEO, when we would have conversations, he would just talk about how whenever you're approaching someone, you have to provide value. What value are you providing? And if I'm going to sit there and take up 15 minutes of your time to get information that you don't have to give me, what value am I providing you? I can at least buy you a cup of coffee, $3 cup of coffee. If anything, if I want to know more, how about I take you out to lunch and just say it up front. I'm going to pay for the lunch. And now you can sit there and get as much information as possible. Now we're in the corporate setting. You may have the opportunity to record the message. You can be very direct, take notes, whatever you want to do. In the more personal setting, I would stray away from having a recording device or even having a notebook. You're just going to have to listen, right? Don't be weird. Yeah. Just be, adds some normalcy to it, and just get to know the person. You got to think, you may be thinking about your business, your stakeholder, whatever you were trying to accomplish in the process, but consider them. Who are you, right? This is, if you're truly trying to do something that is worth making a remark about, how are you understanding this person and taking into consideration their life experience so you can solve a true problem? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell them, how do we provide you a impactful solution based in your experience, getting you to your desired reality?
Yeah, I love that, dude. So I want to talk a little bit about maybe applicable practices, things that we could actually do. I wanted to sort of talk through that. Maybe one of the things, I know we've sort of started the example of trying to improve the QA process for UX design, making sure engineers ship the designs that we sent them. I wanted, do you mind if we kind of go through an example and kind of pretend we're the design team?
Let's do it. I'm here.
All right. So I'll be the designer and you're my coach. You're helping me talk through this. So I've got a big team. Let's use my example, my previous job, right? We had designers in New Orleans, California, and then in Hungary. We had four pods of 7 or 8 engineers in New Orleans, and then we had 3 pods of about 10 engineers in Budapest in Hungary. And so I want to identify how we can get our teams to actually ship the code, ship the designs as we sent them. So in Figma, or at the time it was Sketch. So we design the thing. The problem that we're having is we design a thing, and when it gets to push to production, stuff's off. Pixels are wrong. It doesn't function like we expected. It's a different component, whatever. And the problem is that UX wasn't a part of that QA process to give their input. And it met the acceptance criteria, but it didn't meet there was no UX acceptance criteria, right? It functioned as it was written in the story. So What we want to do is influence that team to change the process so that UX can have a larger role in getting that, ensuring that shipped code works the way we expect. So that's the problem statement that we're kind of thinking about. I've got 5 people I want to talk to. I've got a diverse group. I've got 3 different teams with 3 different engineers in New Orleans. And I've got 4 different teams with a bunch of different engineers in Europe. And so immediately off the top of my head, I'm thinking, who am I going to talk to? Obviously, I want to talk to a group in the States, and I want to talk to a group in Hungary, because the way those 2 engineers work are probably very different. The culture of the team is different and all that stuff. So I'm going to identify maybe people from different pods that aren't on the same team. And I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 7 pods total. Maybe I just grab a couple, try to split the difference and say 2 in the States, 3 in Hungary, because I got more engineers out in Hungary. What do you think? Does that sound reasonable? What would you do if you were me? Would you break it up differently? How would you do that?
So I like where your mind is going. All right. So first, we're looking at each of the different pods. But I also love how when you initially said that, you said because we have more pods in Hungary. So again, we always look at what is the context of the situation. Where's the bulk of the work coming from? Because more than likely, we're going to find that that's where we can have the largest impact, right? If you ever seen those like quadrants, right? We're going to work in that top right-hand quadrant. What's the most important with the highest impact? How can we work in this space? So that's where my mind initially goes, right? If it is based, although you said it's based in the States.
So the way that our team was set up, the like product managers, the program managers, they're the leads for like the, in the executive level were in the States. There were product managers, more tactical product managers who like help execute in Hungary. And then also, QA people in Hungary. And we had designers in Hungary as well.
Yeah. So this turns out to be actually a larger project, right? Because now we're not just talking about developing a product. Right now, we're talking about how do we change a system. And in that system, there's multiple stakeholders right now. So although we actually have, you might say like we had all these things that didn't work when we launched, all right, when we released this new update or this new product, we understand that we have to get, again, context for the system. So we may have to talk to the PMs. We're going to have to talk to the PMs, talk to the designers, as well as talk to the engineers. And again, that is allowing us to understand the landscape and how is everyone viewing this process. Because what we also find is that everyone is the director of their own movie. That's why we listen. That's why we sit and understand these individuals, because it allows us to paint this very, very clear picture and provides us context so that we can be strategic. The whole goal is for us to be strategic in how we move forward instead of going, as I mentioned earlier, off our own assumptions, off our own bias, and is built out of fact. So first, we're probably going to look at, again, context. Who's doing the most work? Who's going to have the most impact when we look at these pods? We can't talk to everyone, so we don't want to boil the ocean. And more than likely, especially when we come to this world in tech and development, everything needs to be done, yesterday? 2 weeks ago, all right? And so many people are there. So we want to figure out who are the key players that we want to talk to in each of the different tiers within the organization. Once you understand who we need to talk to in these different tiers of the organization, now we need to craft a guide that allows us to speak truly to their experience. We're not going to ask the same questions for the people leader as the engineer, as the designer, as the researcher. So there is going to be a little bit of a customization with this. And now this project is getting pretty big, but we're looking at an enterprise. All right. So you may want to bring on a person. Okay. Bring on a person to help so you can split and divide this. Now, if you are just one person, don't fret. Okay. Take a deep breath. I know I just said a lot. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. All right. If you do what you can, and you will learn from that. If you could just speak to 3 PMs, 3 engineers, all right? Do what you can in the time that you had, and you can always build on it. But the goal is for you to build out a foundation so that you can start making decisions, informed decisions, so you can help serve these individuals. Once you have that, ideally in this setting, this is a very specific setting, you want to take them along for the ride. So if you can get your A player in each of those different groups, because they might hear something that you don't. All right. They might be able to provide a solution, but you don't have. There is power in collaboration. So there's so many different aspects in this. I feel like I answered your question, but I also went down a rabbit hole.
No,
So
it's
I'm
good.
sorry, but like that's kind of like what's my brain thinking, how I'm thinking in this process.
That's fine, dude, because like as I'm thinking through this, I mean, this framework can be applied to very small decisions. It can also, I think, be applied to the large decisions. And I maybe I picked a bad example for us to just sort of quickly run through it, but I think you bring up a good point that like doing this, we like sort of uncover other additional things that we hadn't expected before, which I think is a really interesting part of this. And when I think about this too, and I'm thinking about like in this case, like a design team wants to change a process, right? There's an aspect of this, I think that's at the organic level. Like we have to convince the people doing the work to change a process and actually not just change the process, but go along with the change. Because if they fight it and they don't do it or they ignore it, there's no better, we're not improving an outcome. And then there's also the people at the top that maybe need to bless the change, the process change, or put an official toll gate in at some point to make sure people are actually following it and they're held accountable if they don't. And so it's interesting, like, as you were talking about, I'm thinking about this and like, there's a messaging for the engineers to get them to go along with it. Then there's a messaging for like the higher ups to maybe get them to see the problem so that you can then work with them to improve it. And so as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about this more, the 5 simple messages are completely different depending on the people that I talk to. So I'm talking to engineers, I'm trying to figure out the messaging to convince them to go along with it and not fight it and make it seem as if we're helping them. So that QA process change, let's say, we didn't talk about the patterns, but like, let's say, for instance, I talk to engineers and I'm identifying the patterns of like, they're worried about bottlenecks. They're worried about QA for UX taking too long, pushing their deadlines back, missing their deadlines. They don't finish the stuff in a sprint. They're worried about communication. They're worried about maybe not understanding designs and how those are implemented. So, there's more time there for them to spend. So, we could probably come up with 15 patterns, but those patterns are going to be very different if I talk to an executive who's just like, people aren't happy with the software. They don't know why. They have no idea. People complain that there's bugs. We got some metrics that says there's been like bug reports submitted, but like we don't really have a lot of qualitative data to tell us like what people think about those bugs or how much it impacts their, perception of the software overall. So those things that we're talking to them, maybe they see different metrics and they see different problems, and those ultimately leading to those 5 questions. So I know we're like kind of running out of time, so we probably can't go too in depth, but I'm thinking about this, like those patterns as my coach, my decision-making coach. You're helping me figure this out. What are your thoughts there? Does that make sense? Like I'm kind of identifying, oh wait, I got like a bigger problem than I thought. I got to go talk to these other people. Messaging then becomes different. What are you thinking? Am I on the right track?
So you're on the right track. So, and that's when you can get to this point where you feel pretty overwhelmed about, okay, what do I do next? Because this is a huge problem. So I just want to go back to that original quadrant, like what's going to make the biggest impact? So first, you want to look at the biggest impact, and ideally, you're going to figure out that the biggest impact is probably where the biggest bottleneck is within this process. So you have that. You've identified that. Now, one thing I love, what you just talked about, and I'll be quick, is that you spoke with leadership, the CEO, whoever you're speaking with, right? What that allows you to do is that you need to understand what is the business intent, all right? What is the goal of the organization? I read a book and it talked about the commander's intent, all right? What is that one statement that is driving the business, that is the North Star of the business? And how do you connect this bottleneck and what's important and determine what's important to that intent? And that is going to allow you to build out the strategy of, okay, how do we need to move forward? We need to talk to the engineers, or we need to talk to the engineers, the research team, and the designers as a whole, because they come together collectively to ensure that this product is a top notch that we want it to be, because we know that the commander intent from the organization is that we produce great product on time, no bugs, and things that people love and make a difference in their lives. All right. So now, again, see how we're kind of going back into this storytelling mode in these messages. So it's really just this beautiful just combination of how do we communicate? How do we understand, communicate, and implement?
Yeah, I love that too. And then like as I want a few other things I'm kind of thinking about. I don't know how realistic this example is for a lot of people listening because a lot of them are probably not working on big giant enterprise teams that span 2 continents and 6 time zones or whatever. But one of the other things I'm thinking about is, having these conversations and the part of identifying the pattern is the executing on those meetings, like actually having the meetings. And one of the things I'm thinking about is like in my example, I would have had my designers in Hungary speak to the engineers in Hungary in Hungarian so that they could have like honest conversations and not try to, because a lot of these people out there, they spoke English mostly, like honestly, a lot of times better than the people in New Orleans spoke English. But it's also English as a second language, right? And so again, that goes with
I love New Orleans, baby. We love New Orleans, baby.
Yeah, you're right, baby. But we don't always speak English. We don't speak English that good down there. So anyway, having those engineers talk with the designers in Hungarian, they feel more comfortable. They're probably more open. They're probably going to be more honest. They're able to articulate a lot better in their native language than they could trying to translate, in English. So again, like I think this is a big aspect, like understanding that empathy and having those conversations in a way that really lets those people open up, like you mentioned, is, part of it is finding that environment where they would be more comfortable and not trying to have me do it all as the leader of that team. So anyway, that was just something I was also kind of thinking about, kind of understanding that empathy and stuff. So, all right, dude. So anyway, so again, and then the last thing I want to talk about is like iterating. Cause like at the end of the day, our goal, I think in this example is to propose a process and then get someone to actually implement the process. But we've got all these messages we want to test. I'm thinking what I would probably do is, identify, because we have the opportunity in this example that we have a lot of engineers that we could talk to. So we've identified a few. Then we go back to the ones that you talked to, and then we go back to some additional ones. Like, hey, if we were to try to implement this process, here are some ways that we would try to explain this to sell this to the engineers. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get people like you to follow this process. We don't want it to be too much of a, hindrance to your work. Obviously, we want to make sure it enables better outcomes and better software overall. So we find those people, we give them like a few options. Like if we were to present it this way and frame it this way, talk about these key points, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that like aligns with what your worldview as an engineer or your worldview as an executive or a product manager, program manager, whatever it is? And kind of going back to a few and kind of getting a sense for like, yeah, I think we're on the right track. If we present it this way, no one's going to want this. They're all going to fight it. But if we present it in this way, we'll get more allies and we'll build up that consensus and be able to actually make those changes that we wanted. That's kind of where I'm at. And that's like, again, leading up to that meeting, or I don't even know if presenting this would be the right approach, but whatever it is, we're presenting it to these people in those small groups or meetings, one-on-one meetings, getting their feedback, maybe changing some stuff, finding that right message to then take it to the team to propose.
Absolutely. I think you want to, so that feels great direction, right? And you'll be able to tell if you're starting to land or if it's starting to go in the right direction. Of course, if they take action, like if in that call to action, they're taking the action. Also, how engaged are they? Are they engaged? Do they lean in? Are they say, ooh, I think you have something? You can tell, you can feel that energy. And is it resonating with them? So once you start to see those things and see how it levers or how they move against one another, it's going to allow you to just paint a clear picture to say like, I may be on the right direction. They may flat out and say, hey, this isn't working, which is great. This is exactly what you want to hear. But 100%, you're on the right direction of what you want to do, following it, these like crafting these messages and testing them with the individuals that you're looking to serve.
I love it. All right. So that was helpful. I feel like that helped me go through this and kind of talk through it with you. I appreciate you coaching me through that. So before we get out of here, one thing I want to just sort of close this off with is like common pitfalls, maybe tips, tricks, things that you've seen people do that maybe just don't work, or things you've seen them do that work really well as it relates to the framework. Any tips, tricks, pitfalls, things people should be looking out for?
The biggest thing that I want people to leave here with, and we've kind of, I'm just going to keep reiterating this, right? Take off the blinders, take off the binoculars. The things that I see people go into a conversation, very grounded in their assumptions, and it prevents them from being open to what they could possibly learn in the conversation. 9 times out of 10, if you go into a conversation looking to prove your assumption, you're going to find it. You're going to find it. And then you will have lost so much information to what you could have figured out in that process. In that same vein, when you go into these conversations, don't look to correct them. All right. They may pronounce something wrong. They may have something, some flow, whatever you're testing, the concept of it. They may misunderstand the concept of it. There's this very natural human, reaction to fix it. No, this is how you do it. No, this is how you say it. I want you to please resist that urge and say, okay, you said what? How'd you get there? All right. Understand what was the process in your thinking? How did you get to this point? Again, we're understanding their current reality. So those are some of the main things, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a good input, if you don't get great insights, it doesn't matter, what themes you create if they're, have a silver lining of your bias in it or whatever your own personal perception of. So really just really do your best to hesitate and resist that urge.
I love it, dude. All right, Stefan, we've had you for a little while now, and I want to make sure we respect your time. I know you're a very busy man. I got 5 little questions I'd like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. Before we do that, let everybody know where they can find you, your business, all that stuff. Give yourself a little plug.
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Stefon Towler. That's STEFON And if you want to find out or learn more, just feel free to give me a follow. Specifically for your listeners here, if you drop Beyond UX in my DMs, I will give you a free really guide on how to follow these principles, what to do to just help you, go through this process. So that's my special thank you to you, Jeremy, and thank you for your listeners, so they can just follow me on LinkedIn and feel free to drop me a DM. Also, I'll be having a webinar in the next 2 weeks. You can find that as well on LinkedIn. Feel free to come and just learn, and I'll be ready to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, dude. Awesome. I got 5 questions I like to ask all my guests to help my listeners get to know my guests a little bit better. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
My favorite non-design book. I would have to say my favorite non-design book right now would have to be, I'm actually reading it right now. I just finished it, and it's called The Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino. I'm always into just personal development, and in order for you to just stay positive and to really just continue to reach, you need to have just that positive mindset and that positive internal language. So I really love that book.
I love it, dude. That's a great mindset to have, especially in the tech world today. All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast?
No, my favorite non-design, oh man, the Secret to Success podcast with ET and CJ. Man, I love that podcast. 100%. 10 out of 10.
The Secret to Success. All right. I got to check that one out. I'm always looking for good podcasts, man. I do the dishes every night, and that's my podcast time. So I got about 45 minutes to do the dishes.
Okay, that's great podcast time.
Yeah, dude, it's nice. And it leaves me alone. I always worry about dropping my earbuds in the sink while I'm washing dishes, but so far so good. All right, I'll have to check that one out this week. All right, next up, what is your favorite meal? This could be something you cook, something your grandma used to cook, something you had at a restaurant.
Absolutely. So my favorite meal was honed in 2020 because, I was just big on just doing the same thing, eat the same meal all the time. It's called a power bowl. All right. And it's really just a mixture. I put kale, put salmon, put rice, an egg on it, put a little teriyaki sauce. And it's just something that's not too heavy, but man, you can lay it on. It's just nice and healthy. Real zen. I love it.
I love that, dude. Yeah, a little Asian inspired little action there. You got me hungry, man. It's about lunchtime right now. I gotta go eat. I'm gonna go eat something. I might go make something like that. I got some leftover rice.
Just a bowl of rice. That's what we're doing now.
Well, I was gonna say I made some tacos the other day, like some chicken tacos, like grilled chicken, and I might do that with some avocado. Make like a sort of Spanish Mexican kind of inspired one a little bit. I don't know. I don't
Chef
have the kale.
Miller.
I do have some spinach though. Yeah, there you go.
I see you,
Chef. You inspired me. You inspired me. All right.
Oh man.
Next up. What is your favorite vacation spot?
Oh, man. My favorite vacation spot is Costa Rica. Yeah, Costa Rica. I think it was out in Jaco. Oh, man. I love the outdoors, man. And I do I don't know, adventure things. So surfing out there with the water and the mountains is if I could be outside, then I want to be outside. Jungle, just put me in the jungle somewhere.
I think we talked about this a while ago, but you like ski and you do like snowboard too, right? And you
I snowboard. Yep, I do.
You surf and stuff as well too. Did I know that? I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that? I can't
Yeah.
remember if we talked about that before.
I don't think we did, man.
About
just
surfing. Oh, I could imagine you surfing out there, man. Hanging
It's
hanging
amazing.
out. Some of those little like little dive bars out there on the beach in Costa Rica, surfing all day. I could see Stefan doing that.
Just give me a few years.
We went to Costa Rica for our honeymoon, man. That was like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, dude. Oh my God. We did up in the mountains, like the cloud forest stuff. We did like Arenal volcano, hot spring stuff. We went down to Manuel Antonio and hung out down there on the beach for a little bit, dude. Oh my God. That was like
it's beautiful, isn't it? It's just could stay.
Dude, we were driving down you'd appreciate this. We were driving down this little like 2-lane road, windy road down a mountain. And there's a guy in the middle of the road just waving me down. And he's like in the middle of the street, just stop, you know? And I'm like,
I don't know.
What the fuck? So I was like, he looked nice enough. So we pull over. He's like, stop the car. And I was like, what, dude? He's like, there's an iguana. And he was like, check it out. And he was like, he wasn't even trying to like get me to not hit the iguana. He was just like, it's the biggest iguana I've ever seen. Come see.
He said, you got to see this. You got to see
and
this.
he was just like flagging people down.
The only one.
Oh my God. And he was just flagging people down to see this iguana. And it was huge, dude. I mean, I had no frame of reference because I don't know how big iguanas get. But he was like, it's so freaking big, you know? And he was just like waving people down, getting them to stop just to show them the iguana. That was like one of my favorite stories about Costa Rica. I was like, that was it. We just went, all right, cool. That's a great iguana. And just like went our way. But I thought that was hilarious. And dude was just like.
You need to share the moment.
Yeah,
know?
Dude.
Sometimes
I
you
love
gotta
that.
Share a moment.
I love that. All right. Last question. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
I would have to say it'd have to be Miro, right? It'd have to be Miro for me just because it works. It's one of those things that allows you to just help build an experience for your audience when we are trying, for my audience, I would say, when we are trying to develop, really just develop a clear idea of what these themes are from our insights. So had to be Miro.
I love it, dude. Yeah, everybody loves FigJam, man. And I am just, FigJam's all right, but man, I tell you what, dude.
I love FigJam too, but you said it couldn't be Figma.
But personally, I like Miro over FigJam myself. I don't know. I'm a Miro guy. I don't know. I just like the features sets, the AI stuff it can do is really cool. But just, I don't know, man. I like Miro because they have like all the plugins, and then you can do like wireframing and stuff in Miro too. Like you can throw together a quick wireframe. I guess
wireframing. You don't have to do any wireframes anymore.
Well, you know what I mean? Like just a mock, like a sketch. Like if I just want to like get a point across, like just throw some like little components together just to show something. I guess Figma, you could just copy and paste from Figma if you went to, but
it's more fun when you can put it together.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I like Miro. All right, Stefan. This is fun, dude. I really appreciate you coming on. I always love talking to an actual friend and someone I know personally. I don't get that opportunity very often, but I really appreciate you coming on. Before we get out of here, one more time, let everybody know where they can find you. Give yourself a plug one more time, and then we'll get out of here, man.
Absolutely. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Follow me there. Connect with me there. Lots of great things. Just want to help you. My ultimate goal is to help you get from customer discovery to validation, and that way you can just ensure that you are building better products and not wasting your time and money. All right. So that's LinkedIn. Find me. That's StefonTowler. I'll be looking for you. Come find me.
Right on. And we will include all those links in the show notes. Check that out at beyonduxdesign.com. Stefan, thank you again so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, all right, y'all. That's it for Stefan and me for today. I hope we helped to shed a little bit of light on the 5-15-5 framework. I think it's a fantastic framework to help you understand even just stakeholders. If you're not doing customer research, it's still a great way to understand all those people that you need to influence every day. But have you used something similar in your work? And if so, how's it helped you? Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would love it if you left a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, then why don't you tell them about it? That would be fantastic. Don't forget to check out the Beyond UX Design shop. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful UX-themed art prints and digital downloads you can print yourself. Grab your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design, master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes, get free shipping on all orders over $30, and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to get your print on. Transform your understanding of customer insights with Dr. Ari Zalmanow's Customer Insights Blueprint. Join a community that redefines research, increasing customer clarity and enhancing growth decisions. Build an insights machine within your business and discover hidden value using your current resources. Don't miss out. Grab your free blueprint at beyonduxdesign.com/blueprint today. Remember to sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes along with all the show notes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all. Oh, God. I'm getting old. My back hurts.
Gotta stretch, man.
I know, man. I got this chair I sit in during the day, and I think it's the chair. It's just a dining room chair. I need to stand up. That's what I need to do.